Morning, Bill.
Good morning, Mark. Here we are, yet another. Today will be a really interesting podcast.
It will, and we're sitting in a really nice spot, the Royal Geelong Yacht Club.
Yes,
gazing out over the water.
Look at all those boats and things. There's a lot of yachts. In fact, back in a long time ago, I was a member of this yacht club when I was in primary school, and we used to sail what was called cadet dinghies.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yep.
And of course, then we moved on from there. But and this morning I've already been here with our guest today for the Cardinia Park Rotary Club.
So you got back into Rotary?
Cardinia Rotary Club, sorry. Yeah, I've gone back into it. And
Excellent.
We'll talk to one of the movers and shakers of Rotary in a minute.
So today's guest, Bill?
Is Keith Fagg. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Bill, and Mark, good to be with you.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
And Keith's been on our radar for a while, but we haven't managed to pin him down, but today we have. So I'm really looking forward to today.
That's right. So, well known in Geelong, and Keith Fagg, OAM, for services for the community. And he does that in spades, Mark.
Absolutely.
Right.
And Keith, you're running Gatehouse Consulting?
That's right. That's what I trade as.
You trade as?
Most for my mediation services.
Services.
That's right.
Things.
And
So
of course, are you still involved with Fagg's Mitre 10?
On the Fagg Brothers board, and the director of Fagg Brothers, and also an advisor to the Fagg's Mitre 10 board, the trading business
So you
board.
you can't purge that out of your blood. Is that right?
A bit like Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never quite leave.
That's right. All right.
So Keith, where was primary school?
Primary school was the Belmont Primary School, right?
Was it in Belmont?
Up in
Okay.
Mount Pleasant Road, Belmont.
Still there going strong,
It
Keith?
is school number 26 in Victoria.
Oh,
One
is
of
that
the very
right?
earliest schools in Victoria. All my family went there, all our five of us in our family. And then
High school?
at high school was Geelong College.
Yep.
Yeah. My parents both grew up during the Depression, and my mother's father was a Methodist minister, and my father's father was obviously part of the Fagg Brothers business. And Bert, who I think you would have met
Remember
over
Bert?
the years,
Yep.
wanted to be an engineer when he was a young man, a teenager young man, but he was growing up during the Great Depression. And the family business didn't have the funds or didn't have the capacity to send him to university, so he was apprenticed to his father as a joiner. And while he did that very, very well, his passion was engineering and mechanical engineering more so. And so he always wanted to make sure that his children were given the choice about education and about career, not being forced into anything. So that's why my mum and dad worked. Mum was a teacher. And they both worked hard in order to send us to, Geelong College or Morongo for the girls at that time, because that was considered to be the best
schools.
education at the time.
That's fantastic.
You know, which is it wasn't easily, even when the business was expanding, it was gradually expanding, it was still difficult for them, but they put their priorities on our education.
But just on that, Keith, isn't Geelong blessed with a number of schools? It has good schools, and now you look at Matthew Flinders and you look at Belmont High with a reputation you couldn't jump over. The College, St Joey's, Sacred Heart.
Heaps of good schools.
Right, it's just we are blessed down here for good education.
The government schools are a different thing again than what they were in my generation.
That's right.
For us baby boomers, and the breadth of the sort of the Cardinia colleges, Christian colleges, right up to Geelong College, they're spoiled for choice, and that's why a lot of young people who leave Geelong, pursuing careers and things, when they've only owned their own families, they end up going back down here just for that choice. Apart from anything else.
That's right. Now, Keith, I probably know the answer to this question. Your jobs during school. What was your first job?
My first job was Fagg Brothers hardware store, and it was sweeping floors. I wanted to buy. The reason I put the job on was I was 14, I think, end of Form 3, Year 9 these days. Wanted to buy a trumpet. Buy my own trumpet, and Dad said, "I'll go your halves in it, but you got to earn it, right?" So I went to work at Fagg Brothers with Uncle Stan Fagg. I remember Stan, and serving customers, counting out boxes of screws. We used to have screws individually and nails individually. It was a different era altogether. Cash register.
Did you put them in paper bags?
We did.
Yes, there you go.
The whole thing. And at the end of the first week, I got my first pay packet was $12, and I wasn't even on the payroll though. I was petty cash. I was petty cash. So
it was called folding
money,
money.
real money. And I worked there as a student, between school days and then university days during holidays and weekends.
And whilst at high school, did you have any sort of real ambition of what you were going to do when you left?
No, I didn't. Yeah. Really, I didn't have. I thought something in business, but I had really no idea. I wasn't scientifically or engineeringly focused, so I didn't have that sort of mindset. So I was more in the accounting or commerce area. And my brother Barry, he did a commerce degree, and I actually applied for that at Melbourne Uni, but didn't get in. I didn't get quite the marks for that, so I had to end up doing economics at La Trobe University, and it took me down a different path.
So once you finished uni, where did you head off to?
So first job after uni was I did a 4-year degree in economics, specialising in location economics. That was I did an honours degree, and that was fantastic. I enjoyed that. I learnt more in my honours year than I did in the first 3 years. It's one of those things, and I actually ended up doing a bit of tutoring at La Trobe after that for a few years. First job was as a research officer with the Victorian Chamber of Manufacturers.
Oh, okay. ACM.
Yeah,
it
used to be VCM.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, and then became ACM. You're right.
Because I used to be a member, Keith.
You would have
been. I went on a couple of industry study tours to Japan with them.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. So the Victorian Chamber of Manufacturers had an office in St Kilda Road, Melbourne, and I was employed as a research officer doing specific industry research. So we did research in the waste management industry. This is by paid projects by the industry associations who were part of the VCM. Did a research in the funeral industry. We did economic analysis of after budgets and that sort of thing. And so I spent 2 years doing that, and then a year as running executive officer of associations, Australian Sheepskin Association, Wool Scouters Association, so we had a few members in Geelong. And I did that. But then I ended up going quite a different direction.
So your sliding doors
moment. Something happened?
Yeah. Well, the sliding door moment was this. As you know, our family has been heavily involved with the church, and I'm a member of Wesley Church, and not sort of, we just do what you can for the community, and had this sense I wanted to do something different. And at that stage, what's now called Frontier Services, which was previously Australian Inland Mission of the United Church, was looking for a research officer to do some work for isolated children. And more specifically, children who live in isolation, who have to leave home to go to school, from a remote station or mining community, go into a major town and live in town, and how we accommodate those children more appropriately. In those days, they had big hostels, dormitories basically, and they had all sorts of issues going on, and they're looking for, let's do some research into how we can do it better. And this was 1979, the International Year of the Child, if you remember back then. Yeah. And so I was commissioned to do this research. Now, it's every young boy's dream to drive around Australia for a year, seeing the world. Every boy's dream except mine. I was a homebody, basically. I wasn't focused on the bush or outback or anything, but they gave me a brand new Holden Kingswood station wagon, V8 station.
Not the Kingswood.
Not the Kingswood, the Kingswood station wagon, and I drove for a whole year. I drove right around Australia, spending time, a bit of time in Alice Springs, a bit of time in Darwin, went a lot of time in West Australia and far north Queensland, and wrote a report about the needs of isolated children. And the next year, I presented that to Malcolm Fraser, the Prime Minister, who was in Darwin at the time. I'll tell you about that. And we got a boost of $4 million of our funding as a consequence to do it differently. So that was sort of a sliding doors moment, because it put me in a different direction, if you like.
Absolutely.
And because of that, I spent time in Darwin, I said, during that year, and I met some people up there, and they were looking for someone to take on an administration and finance and HR role in the church office in Darwin, working with the Aboriginal communities in Arnhem Land and the Kimberley. And so I took that job from January 1980. Heather and I got married on the 1st of January 1980. I mean,
So where did you meet?
we met back in
Back
Geelong.
in Geelong?
But
Okay.
although Heather's from Ringwood, we met at the church camp,
Yep.
as you
Right.
do. Almost 50 years ago now. And we got married on the 1st of January. So 10 days later, we took put the car on the train, because the road wasn't made virtually between Port Augusta and Adelaide, and Alice Springs, and then drove to Darwin and started work in Darwin in January 1980, which was only essentially 4 years after the cyclone.
Yep.
And the Darwin then was a whole different town than what it is now. It's a major city now, but it was fantastic work, really challenging work. Really, it was at the time where the government was changing their policy from Aboriginal mission stations, if you like, and being run by white people to actually there were local councils elected, and the Aboriginal people were running their own communities, and the church's role was supporting those communities with administration, health centres. Other community development workers. The outstation movement was just starting at that time, and also linguistics as well. So my role was to manage the finances. We had received a lot of government funding to support our work, and also to recruit people to work in those communities. So most communities would have a builder, have a mechanic, have a nurse who they were employing, but they needed help to help recruit them. So I would spend a bit of time travelling between Darwin and Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane, interviewing people for jobs in those communities. So we had 2.5 years up there, and it was fascinating, but really, I mean, loved it. And Heather worked as a teacher, and I worked, interestingly, as a casual ambulance officer.
Oh, right.
Up
Yes,
there.
you do, because it's how it's run.
Now, you're right. So because I was on, I'll look at that in a moment, but they needed more ambulance officers from St John's, and John's ran the service 24/7 up there, but at that stage there's no funding for paid people in the evenings and weekends, so they had volunteers running the ambulances in the evenings and weekends.
Well, I
And,
think
and
I
it still
mentioned-
continues to
That's
that.
right.
In WA,
Yeah.
where my son is, as a paramedic,
Yep.
once you get out into the sticks, as they say,
Yep.
they're all volunteer
Exactly.
ambulances.
I think
Yep,
I
yep.
might have mentioned it on this podcast before, Mark, but my father, during the war in Yarrawonga, owned a pub,
Yeah.
but he was the volunteer ambulance
Yeah,
driver.
that's right.
Right? And I can remember as a tiny little kid, him driving the fire truck with the
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
as well.
Most ambulance services right around Australia started with volunteers, local communities saying we need an ambulance, we're going to put money together and raise money and buy a car, an ambulance, basic ambulance, and a shed to put it. And that's where the basis of a lot of the regional services came from. And ended up 10 years later joining the ambulance board here and did 20 years on that.
So what brought you back to Geelong?
Okay, so we had 2.5 years up there, but we loved Darwin, but I figured that I really needed a bit more business experience and a bit more, understanding of life in general, I guess. And we didn't want to really bring our children up there. We didn't have children then, but there was a drinking culture there, which was, and some aspects of the society which wasn't quite as good. So we decided to come back home. Did a bit of travelling first. Came back here and was unemployed for 3 months. Couldn't find a job. 1982, right? Things were brilliant economy-wise. It was hard to find a job. My father wanted me to join the business then, but it wasn't quite ready yet for that. So I applied for a number of different jobs. And, of course, nothing for 3 months, and I had 3 drop offers on the one day. It's always the way.
That's right.
Always the way.
Yeah.
I took a job finally with the Australian Resources Development Bank, which was a merchant bank at the time, which funded mining developments, because at that time the major banks could not lend long. They couldn't lend more than 4 to 5 years. These are 10-year plus loans for the mining industry. So I had an administration job, then a corporate finance job with the Australian Resource Development Bank for 2 years, travelling up and living in Geelong and travelling up and down to Melbourne on the train on the Red Rattlers, as I'd done before when I was working with the research with VCM.
And the trains were just as quick in those days
They were just
as they are now.
Maybe not quite so comfortable, but just as quick.
That's right.
And never had to stand. Very rarely had to stand. It's another whole story. When I unpack that one. So we take it fast forward to 84, and we had our first child, Mark, whose name Mark, sorry, and I was offered a job in corporate finance with the State Bank, Victoria, the state as it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember the interview I had with the then CEO, who was running Tricontinental, was involved at that time as well. There was a bit of a
There's some
connection
old
there.
names, yes.
Yes. I remember going, and the guy was interviewing me with his cigar and his thing, a glass of whiskey, and he said, "Oh, you'll be right for us, you'll be fine." And I can remember I rang up Dad and said, "Look, I'm just wanted to let you know I'm about to take this job in corporate finance." It was the next step, you know.
Yeah.
And Dad said, "Oh, I thought you'd said you'd be maybe thinking about coming back now, right? Or the last time you said, because I'd said to you, next time I'll come back, right?" I said, "Well, let's have a think about it." So I went. And I because we just had a young baby, and I was travelling to Melbourne, 12-hour days, that sort of thing. So I next Saturday morning went to had a chat with my uncle Stan.
Yep.
I think you've met Stan, Mark.
Yep.
I know you may.
No, I don't.
We didn't meet him.
No.
Okay, and said, and they said, "Look, I think it's time to come back. We need you to Barry. That starts to work at the business. My older brother Barry, but we need next generation to come through." And so we talked it through, so I swapped my corporate Collins Street suit for a work trousers and work boots, and started back in the old timber yard, and started from the scratch again in October 84. And like a family business, you'll learn it. So I've spent 2 years in working in every aspect of the business at that stage, including making trusses. We had we made trusses way back. Number of years. That's another story. And every store, South Geelong, West Geelong store, the truss plant, the mill, and then in '86, sort of came into the office to work more alongside my brother Barry. At that stage, Stan, just not long after I started work, Stan was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and that turned out to be fatal for him 5 years later. But it enabled us to work. Barry and I both. I worked with Stan for I guess 5 years directly, and Barry a bit longer. So because he was the main director of the business, and he was sort of like the business part of it. Dad was more the joiner around the mill, and he died in October 1989. So the timing turned out was quite good.
That's good. And that led to the end of it, where you and Barry actually owned the business outright.
No.
Is that not quite right?
Not quite right. No, it's family. When you get 4 generations of a family business, as you'll be well aware, you get different aspects.
It's a pyramid, isn't it?
A pyramid
and
widens.
as it gets to the bottom,
exactly,
it expands.
Yeah. So what happened was there was 3 families in the business and owning the business, and we worked alongside our cousin Ray Fagg, and we worked among the mill. Remember Ray? And so we actually ran. Well, I guess we ended up running the business. There was a board and everything. The board sort of made the final call, but Barry and I ran the sort of the business end of it and the retail part. Ray really ran the timber part, but increasingly and then Ray retired a number of years ago. So we were able to. There's a couple of corporate restructures along the way, but in 2007, I think it was 2007, when Ray wanted to rationalise his shareholding to do other things. It was really his passion was farming as opposed to being timber farming. He loved cattle farming. So we and my cousin Don at that stage, who was Stan's son, was working part time, and he wanted to become a farmer as well. So we ended up coming to an arrangement where we bought the shares in the family business. We bought the business from the family company.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And established a separate trading company.
Yes.
And so that became Fagg's Geelong. So the Fagg brothers still owned the property, and we paid rent to the family company.
Well, as you know, I work in family business, and
that's right.
I see this all the time.
And
that retains the original assets, and the legacy's not lost.
Exactly.
Now,
the other interesting thing is your big push for family businesses that the next generation should get out and work elsewhere
absolutely.
and come back. And that's exactly what Keith
That's
did
right.
and his dad encouraged him to do.
Well, he did, and in my brother Barry's case, he worked. He's tried as an accountant. He worked in a professional capacity as an accountant for a number of years, and he went to and got a job with CRA and worked with up in Dampier. In the wine company for 3 or 4 years.
And I encourage family business to do that all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not possible. But let's jump forward now.
One thing before you do.
Yeah.
The Fagg family wrote a book on the history of and it's a good read.
I've seen
And Mark's in it.
And I'm in it. And everything Keith's talked about and more is in that book. And it's I don't know, is it still around?
It's still around. I think we've got 30 copies left.
Now,
but it's worth
Keith,
looking for.
I want to bring out an issue, and it's called customer service.
Oh, yes.
And we know what people think of it.
Yeah.
Now, Mark was your general manager
Correct.
there for a while.
Yes.
And he told me a story that every new employee that came in had to sit with you first, and you would give them the lecture on the Fagg way of doing customer service.
It was shellac.
Shellac, fantastic.
Never forgot.
We did, and you'd be pleased to know, Mark, that they're actually being reviving it as we speak.
Fantastic.
So we because in the course of since I joined the family business in '84 and the whole hardware industry's changed remarkably because of Bunnings, with the big boxes coming in, Bunnings in particular, and we had to adapt our business. We had we respect them as retailers. They're such a powerful retailers. We have to work out how we focus on what our competitive edge was. We had to get bigger, so as the smaller stores didn't, we had to close them and consolidate. But one of the key things we felt we were always trying to do differently is customer service, being a family business, family orientated and people orientated, relationship orientated, particularly with trade as well as our retail customers. We would want to offer proactive customer service. So probably 25 years ago, at least 20 years ago, we developed this shellac customer service training, which shellac's an acronym. I won't ask Mark to
Smile was the first
Smile
one.
the first one. Smile, happy greeting, enthusiastic attitude. Very important. Attitude's critical. Look professional. Listen to customer needs. Always add on, which is for the right reasons, not for the would you like fries with that, but to say what do you need to go with the project.
That's right.
The thing you're buying for your project, and then a cheerful farewell at the end. Shellac, and shellac's a product we sell. And what we used to do is make sure that every new person who joined us, whether they be a truck driver or a salesperson or cashier or whatever, general manager, there was about an hour and a half shellac training in a session. So it wasn't necessarily one-on-one, although for many years I did all the recruiting, so I'd meet the people anyway. And also that applies to full-timers and casuals as well. So so it was trying to the aim was to develop a consistent approach to customer service. Because that was the only thing that we saw was going to keep us going.
Well, as you just said, it's your competitive advantage.
Yeah,
and the big boy boxes can't always match that.
Yeah.
Now, we'll jump ahead again to what are you doing these days? And I've just joined Rotary Club at your insistence and chasing for a while.
It took a while.
That's right, because I've been in a couple of other Rotary clubs in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But we had a meeting this morning, and I love the way that your Rotary Club goes about it.
Good.
And what you give back. And
Yeah.
always looking for members, of course.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? What's your life like now?
Okay. Well, I probably have to step back a little bit because as Mark might have mentioned earlier, I'm not sure it's on the recording or not, but about 20 years ago, I got involved as a mediator. So I trained as a mediator. That was when I was still with Fagg, but still doing things. I guess the benefit of a family business, while there's lots of joys, lots of challenges, 24/7, but at least it gives you a bit of flexibility, and that's the reason Barry and myself have both been involved in a lot of community boards and other organisations alongside our business interests. Yeah. So it hasn't all been sort of full-on business. And there's reasons for that. There's one, it's the right thing to do. Two, it's we live and work in the same communities our staff and the people do, so it's the right thing to do. And through that, there was the ambulance board I was on for 20 years, a number of the boards. And a friend of mine's from one of those boards said, "I've just done this mediation course. You might be interested. You might be reasonable." I could have thought just because of the sort of things I do. And anyway, so I did this. Did this course in mediation run by the Dispute Settlement Centre of Victoria, government body, and since then been doing mediation with them on a sessional basis. And I continue to do that now. I really believe in it as a way of resolving issues between people that where people can actually be part of the solution and work rather than going to court or a magistrate and having a third party decide.
So how do people get to that point? Is it a court-appointed mediator?
Sometimes it's referred by the magistrate. Sometimes it's people ring the service directly. It's often to do with fencing disputes, neighbourhood disputes. Sometimes business disputes. Right? Incorporated association disputes with people at bowling clubs and little things can go pear-shaped there.
Oh, welcome to a not-for-profit board.
Exactly, yeah. So I really quite enjoy that work, and that's just on the side, alongside other things I do. And but my father was in Rotary for many years before that, and Belmont Rotary, and he wanted me to join that club, but I really felt I'd like to do something quite different. So when this Cardinia Rotary Club was formed in 1992 as a breakfast club, it's sort of breakfast time's better than lunch or dinner. But, so I joined our club, and we've been going ever since. Together with Kerry Woodman, with the last two remaining charter members, although we've got lots of long-standing members in our club. And it's a very active club. Also had a really good, happy, buoyant culture, but tries to do a lot of things in the community, low key, but really important work. And I'm really pleased you're joining us, Bill.
We haven't got time to go through it today, but a lot of people know you were the first directly elected mayor in town.
Yes, Mark was there when that journey.
I was there when that journey.
And,
you were.
We could do another podcast on that.
yes.
But just recently, and I picked it up. They're bringing a major international marathon to Geelong.
They are.
Now, Mark, I've done a couple of the the Surf Coast treks.
Oh, yes.
But Keith, I think, do you do the 40-kilometre one?
The 40-kilometre one.
Yeah, well, I do the short one. And I'm halfway through that, and the last time I did it, I saw this bloke. He wasn't running, but he was walking, and he flew past me like a flash.
Well, I was going to...
Did I say hello? I think
that was Keith.
I was going to ask, when did you get into marathons?
So again, going back in... I started footy umpiring back in 1998, when my son was involved, Mark was involved in boundary umpiring, and they were short of field umpires, and I thought I can do that with the Geelong Football Umpires League. And I did that, ended up doing that for 7 years. I broke my arm the very first game I'm up on, that's another story, but I did it for 7 years and really enjoyed that. And I used to do, in the summertime, I used to do a few fun runs and things just to keep fit. And one of my Rotary members, he said to me, "Oh, you're running okay. You should do this marathon. We've got this marathon coming up in Paris in 2005 for the Rotary Centenary. You really should run." And this marathon, I said, I can't run. The head says that I'm too old, too slow. That's for young people. I'm not fit enough, all these things. But the heart says, well, that's a bit of a challenge. So I started training, and I ended up running this marathon in Paris in 2005 with another 200 Rotarians from around the world. The idea of the road was just try to break down the stereotype that Rotarians were all sort of elderly old men,
No, they're elderly fit men.
Elderly fit men.
and women.
Sorry. And women. So I was 49 at the time, first marathon. And since then I've ran 14 and now walking... I'm walking now because my knee's not up to it. It's cost me a lot of money, I've spent a lot of money with orthopaedic surgeons as a consequence. But I've now done about 43 marathons.
What was your most memorable one?
Well, first one being the Paris was obviously very memorable, and that was fantastic. But there was one in Medoc in the wine region of Paris, of France, in the Bordeaux wine region. They're called Marathon de Medoc, and you do a big loop around the wine region during autumn, which is there just about before harvest, and you run through 17 different wineries, and people can sample I didn't sample the wine. I didn't. It was all red in that area. I didn't because I didn't want to. I wanted to finish. But it's a beautiful area, and everybody dresses up. Everybody. In Australia, sometimes the old person would dress up as a ballerina or something.
Yeah.
In this marathon, everybody dresses up. There's 7,000 people, all dressed up in all sorts of costumes and outfits. So that was a fantastic experience. I've done the Townsville Marathon 12 times, done the Ocean Road Marathon 6 times, and other ones around the world. With Rotary, we meet once a year with the Rotary Marathon Group. We nominate a marathon around the world, and we sort of meet. So we're heading off soon to go to Mallorca for the Palma Marathon.
Well, that's why we're here today, because Keith said I'm off. So, that's right.
Yeah, it's very. So, Keith, if people want to reach out to you for mediation work, what's the best way to find you?
Probably just through my email address. I don't have a website or anything like that. It's called
LinkedIn, though? LinkedIn would probably...
LinkedIn.
You are on LinkedIn, yes.
I am on LinkedIn as a mediator.
That would be the way to go.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I know the family story because I've read the book.
Yeah.
But it's been a privilege, Keith.
Okay.
Great to have you along.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Thanks
and thank you,
opportunity.
Keith, for participating.
Yeah.
And no doubt you'll do some other adventure, and we'll have to get you back and find out all about that at the same time.
Well, I'll be happy to do that.
And well done for what you've done in Geelong.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because
superb.
you have helped keep Geelong going during the tough times.
Okay.
And good luck in Majorca.
Well, thank you. I'll do my best.